Settle in. Let your shoulders drop. Let your breathing slow. Tonight we are going to walk softly through a story that is older than any country, older than any border, older than in any name on a map. We are going to imagine in the calmest possible way what an ordinary day looked like for the people who lived on the land now called Canada long before that name existed. Not the headlines, not the wars, not the treaties, just the quiet middle of an ordinary day, the sound of a paddle dipping into still water, the soft crackle of a small fire under a clay pot, the slow scrape of a stone blade against a piece of caribou hide. Close your eyes if you want. Let the words move past you without effort. There is nothing here that needs your attention. There is only a calm voice and a long history and the slow turning of seasons across a very large country. Before we go any further, a small invitation. If this kind of slow history helps your mind drift off, you may want to stay close for more nights in the same hush. There is no rush, nothing to remember in the morning. Just stay here as long as you like, and if your eyes have already closed, that is the best possible review this story could receive. If you want to come back another evening, you are welcome here. Now let us begin the day. To begin, picture the land itself, not as a country with shapes and lines drawn across it, but as a slow patchwork of forests, lakes, mountains, plains, river valleys, and frozen coasts. Picture the boreal forest stretching for thousands of kilometers, all spruce and pine and birch, all moss and lichen and standing water. Picture the Atlantic coast with its gray rocks and tidal pools and sheltered coves. Picture the Great Lakes spread out like quiet inland seas. Picture the wide grasslands of the prairies with sky in every direction and herds of bison moving across them in patterns older than memory. Picture the Rocky Mountains rising up in sharp shoulders of stone, and behind them the Pacific coast with its rainforests and inlets and salmon rivers. Picture the Arctic with its long summer light and its longer winter dark, its sea ice and tundra and willow brush. This is the world in which our story takes place, a world that has been inhabited for at least 15,000 years, and according to many oral histories, far longer than that. Now picture the people. They are not one people. They are many peoples. They speak dozens of languages from many different language families. Their homes look different. Their food looks different. Their clothing looks different. Their stories sound different. There are the Mi'kmaq along the Atlantic shore, the Innu and the Naskapi farther north, the Beothuk on the island of Newfoundland. There are the Wolastoqiyik on the river, called by colonists the St. John. There are the Haudenosaunee along the lower Great Lakes, who live in long bark houses and grow corn and beans and squash in great gardens. There are the Anishinaabe in the lake country, paddling birch bark canoes through narrow channels and harvesting wild rice from the shallows. There are the Cree in the boreal forest, hunting moose and snaring rabbit. There are the Dean further west and north, walking great distances after caribou. There are the Blackfoot, the Siksika, the Kainai, the Piikani on the southern plains following the bison. There are the Assiniboine and the Nakota. There are the Salish and the Nuchanulth and the Haida and the Tlingit on the Pacific coast, in carved cedar plank houses with totem poles standing tall in front of them. There are the Tsilkoten and the Secwepemc and the Tunaxa in the interior valleys. And in the Arctic, there are the Inuit, in many groups across many regions, hunting seal and walrus and bowhead whale, building snow houses in the winter and skin tents in the summer. Each of these peoples has its own way of waking up, its own way of moving through the morning, its own way of eating and working and laughing and sleeping. We will not visit all of them in one night, we could not. But we will move gently from coast to coast and back again, and we will try to imagine the small details, the unremarkable moments, the ordinary motions that filled the hours. Let us start before the day begins. It is still dark. The fire in the center of a Haudenosaunee longhouse has burned down to its quiet red embers. The longhouse is a long building, sometimes 20 or 30 meters long, sometimes longer, made of a frame of bent saplings and covered in slabs of elm bark. Inside, it is divided into compartments, each one belonging to a family. Several families share the building. They are all related, all connected through the women's line because the Haudenosaunee are matrilineal. The grandmother of the longhouse, the clan mother, sleeps on a low platform covered in cured furs. Above her, on a second platform, food and tools and clothing are stored. The air smells of wood smoke, of dried corn, of cedar, of tanned hide. It is warm enough. A small child stirs in her mother's arms and falls back asleep. A man rolls over on his sleeping platform and pulls a fur a little higher. Outside, an owl calls once and is quiet. Far to the east, on the Atlantic coast, a Mi'kmaq family sleeps inside a wigwam. The wigwam is shaped like a low cone, framed with spruce poles, covered in birch bark sheets sewn together with split spruce roots. The floor is laid with fir boughs, and over the boughs are spread soft, woven mats and furs. In the center, a small fire glows under a hanging clay pot. The smoke drifts upward and out through a hole at the very top of the wigwam. The night outside is full of the sound of the ocean breaking against rocks. The family is 6 people. The grandmother, the parents, 3 children. They lie close together in their sleeping robes, breathing slowly, dreaming, whatever dreams come. Far to the west, on the Pacific coast, in a great cedar plank house, among the Haida, 20 or 30 people sleep on raised platforms around a central fire. The house is enormous. Its corner posts are whole trees. Its walls are wide cedar planks fitted carefully together. Painted designs cover the front gable. Inside, the air smells of cedar smoke and dried salmon. A few embers wink in the central hearth. The whole village is asleep. Outside, the inlet is very still. A long carved canoe rests on the beach, pulled up beyond the high tide line, draped with a woven mat to keep the dew off the paint. Far to the north, on a winter night above the tree line, an Inuit family sleeps inside an igloo. The walls of the igloo are blocks of hard, wind-packed snow cut with a long boned snow knife and stacked in a slow spiral until they curve in upon themselves and close at the top. A small stone lamp burns inside, fed with seal oil and a wick of dried moss. The flame is low. It gives off a steady, gentle heat. The family sleeps on a raised platform of snow, padded with caribou hides. They are warm. Their breath rises, and the warm air gathers in the dome above them. Outside, the wind moves across the sea ice, and a thin moon shines on the snow. But inside the igloo, the temperature is mild, and the light is soft. These 4 scenes are happening at the same time. Across a country that does not yet exist, in 1,000 variations of home, people are sleeping. Soon the first of them will begin to wake. The first to wake, often, is the eldest woman. She has lived through many seasons. Her sleep is light. She knows the work that needs to be done, and she begins it without making any sound that would wake the others. In the longhouse, the clan mother sits up slowly. She wraps a soft tanned hide around her shoulders. She walks barefoot across the cool, packed earth floor to the central hearth. She kneels down. She lifts a few embers from the bed of ash with a small wooden paddle. She lays thin shavings of cedar bark over them. She breathes gently across them. A small flame appears. She feeds it with a few dry sticks. The fire grows. Light spreads across the inside walls of the longhouse. Other figures stir. The day has begun, although it is still dark outside. In the Mi'kmaq wigwam, the mother wakes next. She also kneels at the fire. She blows softly. She adds small pieces of split birchwood. The fire grows. She hangs the clay pot a little lower over the flames. There is water in the pot, and dried meat, and roots. By the time the children are awake, there will be a warm broth ready to drink. In the cedar plank house, on the coast, several women are already at work. Near the great hearth, one is splitting kindling with a small adze. Another is unrolling a woven cedar bark mat that has been hanging from a rafter. A third is removing the cover of a wooden steaming pit at the edge of the floor. The salmon that was set there in the evening has been slowly cooking through the night. In the igloo, the woman of the household sits at the stone lamp. She trims the wick with a small bone tool. The flame steadies and brightens. She lays a flat soapstone plate on a small frame above the flame. Soon she will set out strips of dried fish, or a piece of frozen seal liver, or a handful of dried berries kept inside a sealskin pouch. Outside, the sky begins to lighten. The first gray of dawn comes very slowly in winter, very quickly in summer. The world becomes visible piece by piece, the shape of the spruce trees, the line of the lake against the shore, the smoke of the first morning fires rising from the houses of the village. Children wake gradually. They have slept beside parents or grandparents or older siblings. They are warm and slow to move. The youngest are still very small and stay where they are. The older ones rub their eyes and crawl out of their sleeping robes and stand up and pull on the soft hide moccasins that have been waiting for them. They wander outside to greet the morning. They are not hurried. There is no whistle, no horn, no ringing bell. There's only the slow rhythm of a household coming awake. Now we must talk about food, because for most of the day, in most of these places, food is what shapes everything that happens. Not because the people are hungry. By and large, they are well fed, well enough. But food must be gathered, hunted, fished, preserved, prepared, and shared. It is constant work, but it is also constant rhythm, and the rhythm is comforting. In summer in the eastern woodlands, the women of a Haudenosaunee village walk out together to the fields. The fields are large. Sometimes they cover dozens of hectares. They are not laid out in straight rows. Instead, the women have planted in low, rounded mounds. On each mound grow 3 plants that belong together. Corn rises up in the center. Beans wind their way up the corn stalks. Squash spreads out across the ground between the mounds, its broad leaves covering the soil, holding in moisture, shading out weeds. These are the 3 sisters. They have grown together for many hundreds of years. The corn gives the beans something to climb. The beans add nitrogen to the soil that helps the corn. The squash protects the earth and gives food and seeds of its own. The women walk among the mounds, weeding gently with wooden hoes, checking for pests, talking quietly. Children follow them with small baskets. Older women rest in the shade and watch the youngest babies. The fields stretch out in all directions. Beyond them is the forest. Beyond the forest is the lake. The wind moves the leaves of the corn, and the sound of the leaves is a soft hush, almost the same sound as the lake on a calm day. When the women return to the longhouse, they bring back greens and herbs, and sometimes early ears of corn. They will boil these in clay pots with deer meat and beans. They will grind cornmeal on stone slabs. They will make small flat cakes of cornbread, sweetened with maple sugar, and bake them on flat stones at the edge of the fire. Among the Anishinaabe in the lake country, the food work is different. The wild rice grows in shallow water, in beds that have been tended by the same families for generations. In late summer, when the rice is heavy on the stalks, 2 people go out together in a birch bark canoe. One stands at the back, poling the canoe slowly through the rice bed. The other sits forward with 2 slender sticks. She bends the rice stalks over the canoe with one stick and gently taps them with the other. The grains fall into the bottom of the canoe. The sound is a soft pattering. The canoe glides quietly. The reeds whisper against its sides. They work for hours, moving up and down the rice bed, and by the end of the day, the bottom of the canoe is full of grain. The next steps will follow over the coming days. The rice will be spread out to dry in the sun. It will be parched gently over a fire to loosen the husks. It will be danced upon in a shallow pit by a young person wearing soft moccasins, who pivots slowly in place to rub off the chaff. It will be winnowed in birch bark trays, the chaff carried away by the breeze, the grain falling clean. It will be stored in birch bark containers and buried in cool, dry caches. It will feed the family through the long winter. Among the Cree and the Anishinaabe and the Mi'kmaq, the early spring brings a particular kind of work. The sap begins to rise in the maple trees. Families travel to their sugar bush. The sugar bush is a stand of maple trees that the family has used for generations. They tap each tree with a small wooden spile that fits into a slit cut into the bark. They hang birch bark buckets to catch the dripping sap. They build a long open shelter and a hearth, and they boil the sap in great wooden troughs into which they drop hot stones. The water steams away. The sap thickens. It becomes syrup and then sugar. The smell is sweet and warm and a little smoky. Children come and go with small wooden ladles. They taste the syrup. They run back to play in the snow that is still on the ground. The sugar will be stored in birch bark containers and used as seasoning throughout the year. On the Pacific coast, salmon shapes the year. In spring, summer, and autumn, salmon return up the rivers to spawn. Different runs of salmon arrive at different times. The people know the rivers and the runs precisely. They build weirs and traps in the rivers, woven structures of cedar slats that funnel the fish into baskets or pools where they can be taken easily. Some are caught with long-handled dip nets from rocks beside fast water. Some are speared with cedar shafts tipped with bone or stone. Some are caught from canoes in the calm pools below rapids. The salmon are brought up to the smokehouses on platforms above the river. They are cleaned with small curved knives. They are split open in long thin halves. They are hung on cedar racks above slow fires of alder wood. The smoke is gentle, the salmon dry and darken. The smell fills the village for days, and after the smoking is done, the dried salmon will be stored in cedar boxes and bentwood containers and will feed the people through the winter and into the spring. A single river can produce enormous amounts of food. A small group can put up many tens of thousands of salmon in a single season. This is one of the reasons the Pacific coast is home to such densely populated villages, with their great houses and carved poles and complex ceremonies. The salmon, year after year, return, and the people, year after year, prepare them. Inland, on the prairies, the bison hunt is the great food work of the warm months. The bison are not hunted on horseback in this early period. The horse arrives on the plains later, after contact, after Spanish horses spread north along trade routes. Before that, the bison are hunted on foot. The people use disguise, patience, fire, and especially the buffalo jump. A buffalo jump is a cliff. The cliff is chosen carefully. It must drop suddenly, and there must be a wide level area above it for the herd to move through, and a slight downhill slope leading the herd toward the cliff edge. For weeks or months before the hunt, scouts watch the herds. They learn the patterns of the animals. On the day of the hunt, runners disguised in wolf hides or buffalo robes work at the edges of the herd, gently moving it in the right direction. Cairns of stone and brush are laid out along the way, forming long invisible lanes that funnel the animals forward. The runners build the pace. As the herd begins to move faster, more runners join in. The animals begin to gallop. They cannot stop. They pour over the cliff. They fall, and they die quickly. And below the cliff, the butchering camp is already prepared. Men and women and children move in with stone knives and butchering tools. The work takes many days. Every part of the animal is used. The meat is sliced thin and dried over fires into long strips that will keep for months. The fat is rendered. The hides are stretched and scraped and tanned. The bones are split for marrow and shaped into tools. The horns become cups and powder holders and decorative pieces. The sinew is stripped for thread and bowstring. The hooves are boiled for glue. The brains are saved for tanning. Nothing is wasted. A single successful jump can feed a large group for many months. When the bison are not running, the people hunt smaller animals. Pronghorn antelope, deer, elk, jackrabbit. They snare rabbits and trap waterfowl. They gather chokecherries and Saskatoon berries and prairie turnips. They dig the deep roots of bitterroot. They harvest pemmican, which is a careful mixture of dried pounded meat, rendered fat, and sometimes dried berries, pounded together and stored in tight rawhide bags. Pemmican is dense and durable and full of calories. A small piece will sustain a traveler for many hours. It will keep for years. In the boreal forest, the Cree and the Innu and the Dean hunt moose and caribou. The moose is a quiet animal that lives alone, mostly, in the willow swamps and birch thickets. To hunt moose, a man must be patient. He must walk slowly. He must know the wind. He must know how to call. He uses a cone of rolled birch bark to imitate the lonely sound of a cow moose. He calls in the dim hours of dusk or dawn. The bull moose, if he is in the right season, will answer. He will come crashing through the brush, antlers swaying. The hunter waits in stillness. He uses a spear or later a bow and arrow. The moose is enormous. Once it has fallen, the work begins. Sometimes a hunter has gone out alone. Sometimes he is days from home. He builds a small platform in a nearby tree and hangs the meat where wolves and bears cannot easily reach it. He returns to camp. He brings others back with him. They butcher the moose. They smoke the meat over slow fires. They carry the hide back to be tanned. Caribou move in herds. They travel along old paths through the land, paths that the people have known for centuries. The people set up camps along these paths in the right seasons. They build long lanes of brush and stones, like the bison drive lanes, to funnel the caribou toward narrow places, river crossings, or fenced corrals. Many caribou are taken. The work that follows is much the same: drying, smoking, tanning, storing. The caribou skin is especially valuable in winter. The hair of the caribou is hollow. Each strand traps a small column of air. A garment made of caribou hide is enormously warm for its weight. The Innu and the Cree and the Dean and the Inuit all use caribou hide for clothing. The Inuit are perhaps the most exacting. A skilled Inuit seamstress chooses different parts of different caribou hides for different parts of a parka. The back hides are used here, the leg hides there, the belly hides in another place. The stitches are tiny and even, made with sinew thread and a bone needle, and they must be exactly right, because in the deep cold, a loose stitch can mean a frozen finger. Or worse, the work takes weeks. The garments last years. On the Pacific coast, the Nucha, Nulth, and a few other groups hunt the largest of all the sea creatures. They hunt whales. They are among the very few peoples in the world who hunt the great whales of the open ocean in canoes that they have made themselves. The canoes are carved from a single cedar log, sometimes more than 10 meters long. They are wide and stable and elegant. The whaler is the head of the canoe, a man who has prepared for the hunt for many months, with prayer, fasting, bathing in cold water, and rituals known only to him and his close family. The crew is also chosen carefully. They paddle out into open water before dawn. The whaler waits with a long harpoon. The harpoon has a heavy detachable head attached to floats of seal skin filled with air. When the whale rises, the whaler strikes. The harpoon head buries itself. The whale dives. The line goes out. The floats slow the whale down. The crew gives chase. They paddle for many hours, sometimes for a full day. They strike again and again. At last the whale tires. It is brought close. The whaler dives into the water to sew the whale's mouth shut so that it will not sink. The crew tows it back to the village. The whole village comes out to meet them. The whale will feed many people for many weeks. The blubber will be rendered into oil. The bones will be used for tools. The baleen will be used for binding and weaving. The hunt is rare, but when it succeeds, it shapes the entire season. Most of the food of most of the peoples, however, is not the dramatic hunt. Most of it is small, steady, daily work, setting snares, checking nets, picking berries, drying fish, pounding nuts, digging roots, boiling soup, stirring pots, mending baskets. Let us walk for a while through the gathering work. Imagine a clearing in the boreal forest in late summer. The blueberries are ripe. A family has come to a known patch on a low ridge above a small lake. They have brought birch bark containers tied with cedar twine. The grandmother knows which bushes are best. She kneels down. She picks with both hands, sliding her fingers up the stems, letting the berries fall into a basket strapped to her waist. The children imitate her, although they eat as many berries as they pick. Their lips and fingers turn purple. The mother sits a little distance away with a wider basket between her knees. She tips the children's smaller baskets into hers when they fill up. The day is warm. The flies are not too bad here on the ridge. The lake below is calm. They will pick for several hours. They will take the berries back to camp. Some will be eaten fresh. Some will be dried on birch bark sheets in the sun. Some will be crushed into thin sheets of fruit leather, dried slowly, and rolled up for winter. Blueberries are only one part of the harvest. There are also cranberries, found low to the ground in bogs and marshes. There are high bush cranberries, in tall shrubs along streams. There are saskatoons and chokecherries, and pin cherries and service berries. There are wild raspberries and wild strawberries. There are hazelnuts in clusters under their leafy bracts. There are acorns in some regions, leached of their bitterness through careful soaking and rinsing. There are walnuts and butternuts. There are wild garlic and wild onion. There are sweet flag and wild mint. There are fiddleheads in the early spring. There are cattail roots from the marsh edges, starchy and substantial, gathered with digging sticks. There are wapato tubers, dug by women wading in shallow ponds, feeling with their toes for the round roots in the muck. There are camas bulbs on the Pacific Coast meadows, gathered carefully and pit-roasted for days until they become a sweet brown paste. There are wild rice, as we have said, in the central lake country. There are dozens of other plants in dozens of other places. Each region has its own catalog. Each family knows its own places. Each season has its own particular work. Medicines, too, come from these gatherings. A woman from a Mi'kmaq community knows where the wild ginger grows, and the sweet fern, and the bunchberry, and the witch hazel. She knows which root is good for a fever, which leaf for a cough, which bark for a wound. She gathers these things in their proper season. She lays them out on a bark mat in the wigwam to dry. She bundles them and hangs them from the rafters. When someone in the family or the band is sick, she takes down what is needed. She steeps it carefully. She speaks softly to the patient. The medicine and the speaking are part of the same act. Among the bark of certain pines and spruces is gathered for tea and for use as a poultice. Among the Anishinaabe, the inner bark of the slippery elm is used for the throat. Among the Haudenosaunee, the bark of the white pine is brewed for a tea that is high in what we now call vitamin C, a tea that was given to French explorers who were dying of scurvy and who recovered within days. The knowledge is precise and old. Now we have walked a little around the gathering work. Let us return to the fishing, because in many places fishing is daily work, not a great seasonal event. Imagine a quiet northern lake on a summer morning. A man in a birch bark canoe paddles slowly along the shoreline. He has set fish weirs in the channels between islands. He paddles to each one. He lifts the woven funnel out of the water. Fish are inside. He pulls them out one by one, knocks them with a small wooden club, and lays them in the bottom of the canoe. He resets the weir and paddles to the next. By midday, his canoe is heavy with fish. He paddles slowly back to the camp on the shore. His wife and daughters are waiting at the cleaning rock. They take the fish, they scale and gut them. They cut them open. They hang them on a wooden rack above a small smoldering fire. The fire is fed with green wood and rotten wood to make smoke without much heat. The fish dry slowly. They will keep for many months. In the rivers, sturgeon are taken with long spears or large hooks of bone. A great sturgeon can be as long as a man and weigh as much as several people. It is hauled out onto the bank with ropes of twisted bark. Its flesh is firm and rich. Its eggs are a delicacy. Its skin can be made into containers. Even its skeleton is mostly cartilage, useful for various purposes. In the colder lakes, lake trout and whitefish are taken through winter ice. The men cut holes in the ice with long bone or copper or stone chisels. They sit beside the holes with simple jigs of bone and ivory. Sometimes they set nets under the ice. They string the nets between holes with long poles, working in a careful pattern. The nets hang in the dark, cold water. The fish swim into them. The men return to lift the nets at certain hours. They knock the loose snow off them, untangle the fish, and reset the nets. The fish freeze almost instantly in the air. They are taken back to camp in bundles and stacked outside, frozen, until they are needed. Among the Inuit, sealing is daily winter work. The seal lives in the sea, but it must breathe air. It maintains breathing holes in the sea ice, holes it keeps open through the winter with the heat and motion of its breath. A hunter goes out across the sea ice with his dogs. The dogs find a breathing hole. The hunter clears the snow from the hole and listens. He sets up a small marker over the hole, a feather or a wisp of down attached to a thin stake. The slightest motion of the marker tells him that a seal is rising. He stands above the hole, his harpoon ready. He stands for a long time. The wind blows. The sky changes. He does not move. Hours pass. The marker shivers. He thrusts. He lands the harpoon. The line is taut. The seal struggles below. He works the line with patience. He brings the seal up through the hole, widening it with a knife if he must. He drags the seal back across the ice to his sledge. He takes it home. The whole family will share in it. The blood is drunk warm. The liver is eaten fresh. The blubber is rendered into oil for the lamps. The meat is cooked or stored frozen. The hide is cleaned and prepared for clothing or boots or rope. Every part is used. The work of a single seal is large. In summer, the Inuit hunt seals from kayaks on open water. They hunt walrus and beluga and narwhal from larger skin boats called umiat, paddled by groups of women and men together. They hunt caribou inland in the late summer, when the herds come down from their northern calving grounds and the hides are at their best for clothing. They fish for Arctic char in the rivers and along the coasts with three-pronged spears called kakivak. The char turn deep red and orange when they enter fresh water. The rivers run thick with them. The people set up stone weirs and take what they need. They dry the rest in the cool wind, and the dried char is sweet and chewy, and lasts for months. We have spent some time on food. Now let us go inside and look at the homes themselves. The shelters change with the region and the season. Each one is the result of generations of knowledge about what works in that particular climate, with those particular materials, for those particular ways of life. The wigwam of the Mi'kmaq and the Algonquian peoples is a small, round, cone-shaped or dome-shaped dwelling. It is framed with bent saplings tied together at the top. The frame is covered with sheets of birch bark sewn together with split spruce roots, and the birch bark is held against the frame with an outer layer of light poles. A door is left at one side, covered with a hanging mat or a hide. A smoke hole is left at the top, often with an adjustable flap. The floor is laid first with fir or spruce boughs, and then with woven mats of cattail reeds or bulrushes. The boughs and the mats together make a soft, warm floor. The fire is in the center. Around the fire are the sleeping places of the family. A wigwam can be put up in a day. It can be taken down, and the bark sheets carried away when the family moves to a new camp. It is excellent in spring, summer, and autumn. In winter, it is banked with snow on the outside, and a smaller wigwam is sometimes built inside the larger one for added warmth. The longhouse of the Haudenosaunee is a much larger dwelling, suited to settled village life. It is rectangular. Its frame is made of saplings driven into the ground and bent over and tied to a ridge pole. The frame is covered with overlapping slabs of elm bark, held in place by an outer set of poles, tied tightly against the inner frame. A longhouse can be 20, 30, 50, or more meters long. Inside, a wide central aisle runs the full length. Along each side are raised sleeping platforms, divided into compartments. Each compartment belongs to a small family. Above the sleeping platforms are storage shelves. Several small fires burn along the central aisle, each one shared between two families across the aisle. Smoke rises out through openings in the bark roof. Long strings of corn hang from the rafters. Dried beans and squash and herbs hang in bundles. The whole house smells of wood smoke and dried food. Many longhouses make a village, and the village is surrounded by a high palisade of upright logs with fields outside. The teepee of the Plains peoples is a portable cone-shaped tent framed with long, peeled poles, covered with sewn and decorated bison hides. The teepee is a magnificent structure. It is precisely fitted to a nomadic life that follows the bison. It can be put up in less than an hour by experienced hands. It can be taken down in less than that. Its poles become the frame of a travois, a sledge dragged behind dogs, or in later centuries behind horses. Inside, the teepee is bright with painted designs that record family histories, dreams, or visions. A small fire burns in the center, in a slight depression in the ground. Around the fire are the sleeping robes and the willow backrests, the parfleche containers of dried food and clothing, the storage bags of medicine and tools. The smoke rises up through the smoke hole at the top, and the smoke hole is controlled by two flaps, which can be moved with long external poles to adjust for wind direction. The teepee sheds rain and snow. It is cool in summer when the bottom edges are rolled up to admit a breeze. It is warm in winter when the bottoms are banked with snow and an inner liner is hung against the inside of the cover. The pit house of the interior plateau is a winter dwelling sunk into the ground. The people dig a wide round pit, sometimes several meters deep and many meters across. They build a low roof over it, framed with stout timbers and earth. Entry is by a notched log ladder through a smoke hole in the center of the roof. Inside, the floor is packed earth, lined with mats and furs. The walls are partly earth and partly timber. A fire burns below the entry hole, the smoke rising past the ladder and out into the cold air. The pit retains warmth. Even on bitter nights, the inside of the pit house stays mild. Several families share a large pit house. They use it for the deep winter months and then move to lighter shelters when the warm season comes. The plank house of the Pacific coast is one of the great architectural achievements of the world. It is built of split cedar planks fitted around a frame of huge cedar timbers. The corner posts are tree trunks, sometimes carved with crests and ancestors. The front facade is often painted with large designs. Inside, the house is divided into family areas around the walls, each with its own platform for sleeping and a small storage area above. A central hearth, or a series of hearths, burn in the center. Smoke rises through openings in the roof, which can be controlled with movable planks. Wealthy houses have great carved interior screens, painted boxes for storage, fine woven cedar bark mats and blankets, and intricate basketry hanging from the rafters. Outside, totem poles stand. These are not idols. They are records. They tell the history of the family that owns the house, the clan crests, the encounters with supernatural beings, the songs and dances and rites that belong to that family. Some are mortuary poles, some are house frontal poles, some are memorial poles. All are carved with care, often by specialist carvers commissioned by the house chief. The igloo of the Inuit is built only of snow. The blocks are cut from hard, wind-packed snow with a long bone or ivory knife. They are stacked in a slow inward spiral so that the wall curves in on itself as it rises. The top block, the keystone, is shaped to fit the closing aperture and is set in place from inside. A short tunnel entrance is dug lower than the floor of the igloo, so that cold air sinks into it and away from the living space. A small window is sometimes made from a sheet of clear river ice or a piece of seal intestine. Inside, a raised sleeping platform of snow runs along one or two sides. A small alcove or shelf holds the seal oil lamp. The whole structure can be built in a few hours by an experienced man and his family. It can be enlarged with side rooms or connected to other igloos by tunnels for larger gatherings. In milder seasons, the Inuit live in tents of caribou or seal skin stretched over a frame of poles, weighted around the edges with rocks against the wind. These are the shapes of home. Behind each shape lies an entire knowledge system. The birch bark must be peeled in the right season when the sap is rising and the bark slips easily from the tree, and only one layer is taken so that the tree may live and grow new bark. The cedar planks must be split with wedges of hardwood or antler from a large straight tree, and the tree itself must be chosen for the right grain. The snow for the igloo must be the right hardness and the right depth, and not too brittle. The poles for the teepee must be straight and seasoned. The longhouse frame must be set deep enough to last a generation. The pit house roof must be reinforced to bear snow load. Each home is the result of an enormous body of inherited and practiced skill. Inside these homes, by day, much work is done. Let us watch it. A man sits on the floor of his wigwam with a half-finished snowshoe across his knees. The snowshoe is shaped from a single piece of white ash, steamed and bent, and pegged into its long oval form. He is lacing the center with strips of rawhide. He works with a small bone needle. He pulls each strip through carefully. He keeps the tension even. The pattern of the lacing is what makes a snowshoe carry weight on soft snow. He has been making snowshoes since he was a child. His hands move without much thought. Beside him, a small fire crackles. Outside, his wife is scraping a deer hide stretched on a wooden frame. Her scraper is a piece of bone with a sharp edge hefted into a small handle. She works in long, even strokes, removing flesh and fat from the inside of the hide. Her arm moves rhythmically. She will scrape for hours. When the hide is clean, she will rub it with a paste of brains and water and let it sit overnight. Then she will work it soft with her hands and her body, pulling it back and forth across a smoothed pole until it is as supple as a fine cloth. Then she will smoke it gently over a small fire of rotten wood, which will lock in the softness and give it the warm tawny color of well-tanned leather. Tanning a hide is patient work. A full deer hide can take many days to finish. A bison hide takes longer, a moose hide longer still. The largest hides are sometimes worked by 2 or 3 women together, who sit around the frame and chat and tell stories as they scrape. The conversation is part of the work. The work is part of the conversation. There is no clock. There is only the hide and the sun and the wind and the soft sounds of children playing somewhere nearby. In another corner of the wigwam, a young woman sits with a basket between her feet. She is making a basket of split black ash. The black ash log has been pounded with a wooden mallet until its annual growth. Rings have separated into long, thin layers. She splits these layers into ribbon-like strips. She trims them with a small knife. She weaves them into a tight oval base. She turns the base over and bends the strips upward to become the walls. She weaves a long, flat strip horizontally through the upright strips in a regular pattern. The basket grows under her hands. She tests the tension. She presses the strips down with a small wooden tool. When the basket is the right height, she turns the top inward and binds it with a wide finished rim. She might add a handle. She might dye some of the strips with sumac or alder bark for a decorative pattern. The basket will be used for many years. It will carry corn, berries, fish, clothing. It will be light. It will be strong. It will be beautiful. In the longhouse, the work of pottery is taking place at the far end. A woman sits beside a low fire with a lump of clay on a flat stone. The clay has been dug from a particular bank by the river and carried home in a basket. She has worked it with her hands to remove the small stones and add a temper of crushed shell or grit. She rolls long, thin coils of clay between her palms. She coils them around to make the body of a pot. She smooths the joins with a wet finger. She thins the walls with a small wooden paddle, beating them against a smooth stone held inside. She shapes the rim. She decorates the upper part with patterns pressed into the soft clay, with a cord-wrapped stick or with the edge of a shell. She sets the pot aside to dry slowly in the shade. When it is dry, she will fire it in a quick, hot fire of dry wood and bark out in the open. The clay will harden and turn dark. The pot will be ready to use for cooking. It will sit in the fire for years before it cracks. In the plank house on the coast, a master carver works on a totem pole. The pole is laid out horizontally on a frame of supports near the beach. The carver has a small adze, a curved knife with a flat blade hafted at right angles to a wooden handle. He works in measured strokes, taking out thin curls of cedar. He carves a face. The face is one of his ancestors, or a clan crest, or a being from a great story. The face has wide eyes and a strong brow. The forms are bold and clean. Below it he carves a second figure, a raven, a wolf, a bear, a salmon, a thunderbird. Each figure has its own meaning. Each pole tells its own story. He works for months. He pauses to sharpen his adze with a small piece of sandstone. He pauses to sit in the shade and drink a cup of berry juice. He pauses to walk down to the water and check the tide. The pole takes shape under his hands. When it is finished, it will be raised in a ceremony with songs and gifts. Several hundred people may come to see it raised. Several families may host the feast. Among the women of the plank house, the weaving of cedar bark is a constant work. The inner bark of the cedar tree is gathered in long strips in the spring. It is dried, soaked, pounded soft, split fine. It is woven into mats, cloaks, baskets, bags, hats. The conical cedar hats of the northwest coast are particularly beautiful. They are woven so tightly that they shed rain. They are decorated with painted designs. They are worn by chiefs at feasts and by ordinary people at sea. The weaver works with a fine pair of bone tools, splitting and threading the cedar bark, pressing each row tight against the last. She works slowly. The hat takes weeks to finish. When it is done, it will last decades. Among the women of the Salish villages, blankets of mountain goat wool are woven on standing looms. The mountain goat wool is gathered from where the goats have rubbed against bushes and rocks, or from goats that have been hunted. The wool is mixed in some places with the white wool of a small dog that the coast Salish bred specifically for its fleece. The dog was sheared every year. Its wool was clean and soft. Mixed with mountain goat wool and sometimes with shredded cedar bark, it became a fine yarn. The yarn was dyed with plants and minerals. It was woven into blankets with complex geometric designs. These blankets were among the most precious goods of the Pacific coast. They were given as gifts at potlatches. They were worn by chiefs. They were buried with their owners. In the prairie teepee, a woman works at quill work. She has gathered porcupine quills from a porcupine taken in the autumn. She has soaked the quills in water to soften them. She has dyed batches in colors made from berries, roots, barks, minerals. She holds a quill in her teeth to flatten it. She splits its base. She lays it against a strip of soft hide. She wraps the quill around 2 threads of sinew, weaving the quill into a flat band of color. She works in patterns. She makes geometric designs, animal designs, abstract designs. She sews the band onto a moccasin, a shirt, a knife sheath, a pipe bag. The work is slow and demanding. The result is bright and lasting. Quill work is one of the Great Plains arts, and it is older than glass beadwork by many hundreds of years. In the igloo, the woman of the household sews a kamik, a high boot of sealskin. She turns the sealskin so that the hair is on the inside for warmth, or on the outside for waterproofing, depending on the season. She uses a curved needle of bone or ivory with a tiny eye. She uses sinew thread, twisted thin and strong. She makes a special waterproof seam in which the needle never goes all the way through the skin. The seam is tight and dry. The boot will keep her husband's foot dry through hours of standing on the wet ice. She sews while sitting on the sleeping platform by the light of the lamp. Her young daughter sits beside her, learning. The girl is given small scraps of skin to practice on. The mother shows her how to position the needle. She shows her how to make the small, even stitches. The girl frowns in concentration. The lamp casts a soft golden light. The wind moves over the igloo, but cannot get in. The work continues quietly. This is the texture of an ordinary day. Many hands at many tasks. Children moving in and out. Old people sitting close to the fire and offering quiet comments. Stories told as the work goes on. Songs hummed under the breath. The smell of wood smoke and food and tanned skin. The taste of broth on a wooden spoon. The light shifting slowly across the wall. Let us walk for a while with the children, because the children are everywhere, and the way they grow is also part of the day. The babies are carried close. Among the Mi'kmaq, an infant rides in a cradle board, a flat wooden frame with a low curved hood, padded with soft moss and rabbit fur. The cradle board is small enough that the mother can hang it from a branch nearby while she works at hide scraping or basket weaving. The baby looks up at the leaves moving against the sky. The baby is rocked by the wind. The baby is rocked by the mother's walking. When she travels, she carries the cradle board on her back with a wide strap across her chest. Among the Inuit, an infant rides inside the back of the mother's parka. The parka is cut wide, and the back is shaped like a deep pouch called an amauti. The baby sits naked against the mother's bare back, warm with her warmth. The hood of the parka, drawn forward, covers them both. The baby can be reached around to nurse without exposing the baby to the cold. The baby can sleep against the mother's back while the mother works. The baby can be passed forward through the hood to be held by another. The amauti is a brilliant solution to the problem of keeping a baby warm in the cold, and it has been used for thousands of years. Toddlers are watched by older siblings and grandparents. They wander the camp. They learn by watching. They imitate the work of the adults. A small boy makes a tiny bow. A small girl scrapes at a piece of hide with a flat stone. They play games. They run. They fall. They are picked up. They are spoken to gently. They are seldom struck. Across most of these cultures, physical punishment of small children is rare and frowned upon. Children are corrected by example, by storytelling, by gentle reminder. The community as a whole holds the responsibility for raising them. Boys grow up watching the men. They learn to make snares. They learn to skin small animals. They learn to read the tracks of game. They go out with their fathers and uncles on short trips, then on longer trips. They are praised when they bring home their first rabbit, their first duck, their first fish. They are given small responsibilities and slowly larger ones. By the time they are young men, they know how to hunt, fish, travel, build shelter, fight if needed, and care for tools and weapons. Girls grow up watching the women. They learn to gather berries and roots. They learn to scrape hides. They learn to make moccasins. They learn to cook over a fire. They learn to recognize the medicinal plants. They learn the songs and the stories. They are praised for fine sewing, for clever cooking, for kindness to babies. By the time they are young women, they know how to maintain a household, prepare food, raise children, and conduct themselves in the social life of the band. This is not a rigid line. Girls hunt. Boys help with the cooking and the gathering. In many of these cultures, gender roles are flexible, and individuals who do not fit a standard role are recognized and given honored places. Among some peoples, there are recognized third or fourth gender roles. Two-spirit people, as some now say, were respected in many nations. They held particular ceremonial roles, particular crafts, particular social functions. They were not pushed to one side. Children are also taught by listening. Every evening, when the work of the day is done, stories are told. The stories are not entertainment alone. They are education. They contain the rules for living, the genealogies of the family, the history of the land, the names of the constellations, the warnings against wrong behavior, the descriptions of plants and animals, and how to use them. A grandmother sits by the fire. The children gather around her. She begins. Her voice is low. She speaks in a steady cadence. The story might be about how the rabbit got its short tail, or how the bear lost its long tail, or how the Anishinaabe were given their place in the world, or how Glooskap shaped the rocks along the coast, or how the raven brought light to the world. She tells it the same way it was told to her. The children listen. They will tell it to their own grandchildren one day, the same way. Storytelling has its own rules. In many nations, certain stories are told only in winter, when the snakes are sleeping and the spirits are quiet. Certain stories belong to certain families and can only be told with permission. Certain stories must be paid for with small gifts. Certain stories must never be hurried. The grandmother pauses often. The fire crackles. A child shifts. An adult adds a small piece of wood to the flames. The grandmother resumes. We can sit by such a fire for a moment. The longhouse is still around us. The stories of the night are not the kind that wake you up. They are the kind that settle you into sleep. The voice continues, low and steady, hour after hour, weaving the same patterns the listeners have always known. Outside the longhouse, the evening grows fully dark. The light from the bark walls is the only light for many trees in every direction. The moon comes up over the lake. Somewhere on the lake, a loon calls. Inside, the storyteller pauses. She drinks a sip of water from a small bark cup. She continues, "Now let us travel for a while, because travel itself fills much of the year. These peoples are not, on the whole, fixed in one place. They move with the seasons. They move with the food. They move along routes that have been used for many generations. In summer, on the lakes and rivers of the Boreal and the eastern woodlands, the canoe is the daily vehicle. The birch bark canoe is one of the supreme inventions of the indigenous world. It is light enough to be carried over a portage by 2 people. It is strong enough to carry heavy loads of furs and food and family. It is fast enough to keep pace with the speed of paddlers. It is repairable in the field with materials that can always be found nearby. More birch bark, more spruce gum, more cedar root for the bindings. A skilled family can make a canoe in a few weeks. The man cuts the birch bark in a single great sheet from a tall white birch in the spring. He cuts cedar for the gunnels and ribs. He cuts thin cedar planking for the inner sheathing. He cuts spruce roots and soaks them and splits them for the lashings. The woman or both together sew the canoe. They steam and bend the ribs. They press them into the bark. They lay the planking against the bark. They seal the seams with hot spruce gum mixed with fat and powdered charcoal. The canoe takes shape. It is light. It is graceful. It will carry the family for years. The paddles are carved from straight-grained spruce or cedar. Each one is fitted to its paddler. There is a long-bladed paddle for the bow and a shorter-bladed paddle for the stern. There is a smaller paddle for a child. In the stern, the paddler uses a special stroke to steer, a J-stroke, an underwater pry, a stern draw, depending on conditions. The bow. Paddler keeps the steady rhythm. The canoe glides quietly through still water and across the wakes of small waves. Long journeys are made by canoe across the lakes and along the rivers. A family might travel many hundreds of kilometers in a season, paddling each day, portaging around rapids and waterfalls. The portage is a known path. It runs from one body of water to another. It has been worn over centuries by people walking with canoes on their shoulders. Logs are placed along the trail to keep it dry. At the ends of the portage, there is often a small clearing where families have stopped many times to rest and eat and repair their gear. In winter, on land, snowshoes are the daily vehicle. We have already seen the man weaving the lacing of a snowshoe. He has, in fact, several pairs. There is the small round bear paw shape for brush travel and short trips. There is the longer Algonquin shape for open country. There is the very long, narrow trail shoe for breaking trail in deep, soft snow. He uses the right shape for the right snow. He wears them with soft moccasins on his feet and stout leggings of caribou or moose. He walks without effort. The snow that would catch a booted foot to the knee or the thigh holds him easily. On the prairies, on bare ground, people walk and pull travois behind dogs. The travois is a simple frame of 2 poles that lean against the shoulders of the dog. The poles drag along the ground behind. A platform of crossed sticks is fixed between the poles. The platform can hold a load. Several dogs can pull travois loaded with the family's belongings. Children sometimes ride. Children sometimes walk alongside. The whole village can move together in this way. The teepees come down. The poles are tied into bundles. The covers are folded. Everything is loaded onto travois. The dogs walk. The people walk. By evening, the new camp is up. On the sea ice, the Inuit use a sledge called a kamadik, with long wooden or bone runners and crosspieces of antler or bone. The runners are coated with a thin layer of ice in winter to make them slide smoothly. The sledge is pulled by a team of dogs. The dogs are fan-hitched in some regions, spread out in a line across the front of the sled, and tandem-hitched in others, running 2 by 2. The driver walks alongside or rides on the sledge. A long journey across the sea, Ice can cover many tens of kilometers in a single day. The hunter takes meat, lamps, sleeping skins, and tools. He can travel for many days at a time. He builds an igloo wherever he stops for the night. Trade follows these travel routes. Goods move enormous distances along ancient networks. Copper from the Great Lake Superior mines moves north and south. Obsidian from the volcanic regions of the far west moves east across the Rockies. Marine shells from the Pacific coast move into the interior. Dentalium shells, used as money on the Pacific coast, move all the way to the prairies. Catlinite, the soft red pipestone of the upper Great Plains, moves outward as pipe blanks and finished pipes. Wampum, the small purple and white beads cut from the quahog shell of the Atlantic coast, moves westward along the Great Lakes. Furs of all kinds move along all the routes. Dried fish, smoked meat, pemmican, maple sugar, wild rice, tobacco, cornmeal, dried berries, all move along the trade trails and the rivers and the coasts. People who live in regions without certain materials know they can acquire them by trade. Families and bands maintain trade partners across long distances, across language groups, across generations. A gift given today will be returned a year later, or 2 years later, or 10 years later in a different form, by a different person. The system is enormous. It links the entire continent. Now, having traveled a little, we should sit down again, because evening is coming. The work of the day is winding down. The light is fading. The fires are being built up. Pots are being set on. The smell of cooking food spreads through the camp. Cooking varies by region. Among the Haudenosaunee, the staple is corn. Corn is ground on a slab with a stone mooler. The cornmeal is boiled into a thick mush. It is mixed with beans. It is mixed with squash. It is flavored with maple sugar, or with strips of dried meat, or with herbs. Sometimes a stew is made of corn, beans, deer meat, and whatever else is at hand. Sometimes flat cakes are baked on a hot stone. Sometimes a soup of corn and fish is simmered all day. The pottery pot sits over a small steady fire. The grandmother stirs it from time to time. Children dip wooden ladles in to taste it. Among the Mi'kmaq and the Innu and the Algonquin, the main pot is a soup or a stew. It contains whatever has been gathered and hunted. Strips of dried fish, dried meat, dried berries, dried roots are all added in different combinations. The pot is hung over the fire or set among the embers. Some peoples use bark containers and cook by dropping hot stones into the water, raising it to a boil without touching the bark with flame. The stone is heated red in the fire, lifted out with 2 sticks, and dropped into the bark pot. It hisses, the water boils. A second stone follows. The cooking goes on without burning the container. This is a beautiful technique. It is old and effective. On the prairies, pemmican is mixed with hot water and broth to make a thick soup. Sometimes a piece of buffalo tongue is roasted over the fire, sliced thin and shared. Sometimes fresh meat is grilled on a green stick, laid above the embers. Sometimes a whole haunch is buried in a pit of coals overnight and dug up in the morning, dark and tender. On the Pacific coast, salmon is the centerpiece of many meals. Fresh salmon is grilled on cedar planks, set upright before the fire. Smoked salmon is cut into pieces and eaten with grease and berries. A traditional dish on the coast combines salmon with seaweed, with herring eggs on hemlock branches, with sea cucumber, with halibut, with whale oil, with crab apples soaked in oil, with soap berries whipped into a frothy pink dessert known as Indian ice cream. The meal is laid out on cedar mats and platters. Guests are seated according to rank and relationship. Speeches are made. Gifts are sometimes given. A simple weekday meal and a great feast both follow patterns of generosity and order. Among the Inuit, the evening meal is simple. Frozen seal meat sliced thin and eaten raw. boiled char in a stone pot above the lamp, dried whale skin called muktuk, cut into small pieces and chewed slowly, berries from the late summer kept frozen in sealskin pouches, a piece of bannock made from imported flour when flour begins to appear in later periods, or before that, a thicker porridge of pounded dried roots and meal. The family sits together on the platform. They eat with their fingers and with small bone tools. There is little speaking. The food is the center of the moment. After eating, the bones are gathered carefully and disposed of with respect, often returned to the sea so that the seal spirits know they have been honored and will return again next year. This relationship with food and with the animals and plants that provide it runs through every aspect of life. The hunter speaks to the moose before he hunts it. He apologizes, he thanks, he explains. He promises to use everything. The fisher thanks the salmon. The gatherer thanks the berry bushes. The seal hunter places a bowl of fresh water beside the head of the seal he has brought home, because the seal lived in salt water and has come a long way and is thirsty for fresh. These are not empty rituals. They are part of a worldview in which animals and plants are persons, not resources. They give themselves to be eaten if they have been treated rightly. If they are not treated rightly, they go elsewhere and do not return. Out of this worldview comes the great religious and ceremonial life of these peoples. It is too vast to describe in one evening, but we can mention a few of its quiet practices. In the morning, a man might step outside his lodge and offer a pinch of tobacco to the sunrise with a small word of thanks. A woman might offer a pinch of tobacco to a particular tree before stripping its bark for medicine. A hunter might burn a few hairs of his first deer in the fire as an offering. A family might lay a small portion of every meal aside for the spirits, or place a small bowl of food on a particular rock at the edge of the camp. The larger ceremonies follow the seasons. In the eastern woodlands, there is a maple ceremony in early spring, a strawberry ceremony in early summer, a green corn ceremony in late summer, a harvest ceremony in autumn, and a midwinter ceremony at the heart of winter. Each one involves songs, dances, speeches, special foods, and gatherings of the whole community. The midwinter ceremony, in particular, can last for many days and involves the formal recounting of the past year's dreams, the cleaning out of old ashes, the kindling of new fire, the playing of the snow snake game on the long snow track, and the offering of prayers for the next cycle. On the Pacific coast, the great winter ceremonies involve the dance societies, the masked dances, the songs that belong to particular families, the long potlatches in which a host gives away enormous amounts of property to confirm names, ranks, and rights. A potlatch can involve the giving of thousands of blankets, hundreds of canoes, vast amounts of food, even the destruction of valuable items as a sign of wealth and confidence. The potlatch is a system of governance, of inheritance, of redistribution, all carried out through ceremony. On the prairies, the sun dance is the great summer ceremony. It involves fasting, prayer, dancing for many days, vows of sacrifice, and the gathering of many bands together for renewal and connection. In the Arctic, ceremonies are quieter and more particular to small groups. There are songs that drive away bad weather, songs that call game, songs that mark the return of the sun in midwinter after the polar night. Throughout the country, there are sweat lodges. The sweat lodge is a small dome shelter of bent saplings and blankets or hides, dark inside, low enough that one must crawl in. In the center is a pit. Hot stones from a fire outside are brought in and placed in the pit. Water is poured on the stones. The steam fills the lodge. Those inside sit on the earth, sweating, praying, singing, talking, sometimes silent. The sweat is a cleansing for the body and the spirit. It is used before hunts, after hunts, before journeys, after journeys, for healing, for marking transitions. There are also pipes. The pipe is a sacred object. The bowl is often of catlinite, the soft red pipe stone. The stem is often of carved wood, sometimes wrapped with quill work or beadwork. Tobacco, mixed sometimes with willow bark and other herbs, is smoked in the pipe at the opening of councils, at the conclusion of agreements, at the marking of friendships. The smoke carries words to the sky. The pipe passes from hand to hand. Each person who smokes is committed to what has been said. There are also games, many of them. Games of skill, games of chance, games of strength, games of strategy. They are not idle. They train the body and the eye and the mind. They settle disputes. They are sometimes part of ceremony. The Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe play a stickball game with long curved netted sticks. The ball is small, hard, hide-stuffed. The field is wide. The goals are at either end. The game can run for hours. It can run for days in some forms. Many players take part. Honor is gained by skill and by stamina. The French in later centuries will see this game and call it lacrosse, after the bishop's crozier, because the stick reminds them of one. But the game is much older than that name. It is sometimes called the Creator's Game. It is sometimes played for healing. A sick person is brought to the field. The players play in their honor. The motion and the noise, and the prayer and the effort are part of the medicine. The snow snake game is played in winter on the prairie and in the eastern woodlands. The snow snake is a long, polished stick of hardwood, sometimes more than 2 meters long, slightly weighted at the head, perfectly smooth. A trough is plowed in the snow along a long, flat stretch, sometimes several hundred meters. The players take turns throwing their snake down the trough. The snake glides far. The throw that goes the farthest wins. The technique involves a long, low, underhand motion, a precise release, a flat trajectory. Boys practice for years. Young men carry several snakes of different weights for different snow conditions. They wax the snakes with fat. They warm them in their hands. They throw with great care. The winning snake travels many hundreds of meters along the trough. The crowd watches and laughs and cheers softly in the cold air. Among the plains peoples, the hoop and pole game is widely played. A small hoop is rolled across the ground. 2 players throw long poles after it, trying to spear it through the center or to land their poles in particular alignments around the falling hoop. Stakes are bet. The game can occupy a long afternoon. The skills involved, throwing accurately at a moving target, are also the skills of hunting and of war, and the game has been honored for that reason. Among the Inuit, string games are played long into the polar night. A loop of sinew or hide cord is held between the hands. The fingers move through complex sequences, and elaborate figures appear: the seal, the caribou, the igloo, the kayak, the man with a fish, the woman with a child, the wolf catching the rabbit. Some figures are quite long and require both hands of 2 players to complete. Each region has its own catalog of figures. The figures are not only entertainment, they are teaching tools. The child who learns the figure of the seal learns the parts of the seal. The child who learns the figure of the kayak learns the shape of the kayak. The teaching is gentle and patient. Dice games are also widespread. Small pieces of bone or carved wood with marked faces are tossed in a wooden bowl. The combinations that come up are scored. The play goes around the circle. Stakes are placed. The game is long. It is one of the great evening pastimes when work is done. Across many cultures, small wooden tops are spun by children. Cup and ball games are played, in which a small bone or wooden ball, with a hole drilled through it, is tossed up on a string and caught on the tip of a slender stick. Cats' cradle figures are made with cord. Pebbles are juggled. Foot races are run. Wrestling matches are held. Swimming contests are held in the warm months. Canoe races are held on lakes. Bow and arrow contests are held with marked targets. All of these activities thread through the year. We should also speak gently of music. Drums are everywhere. There are large frame drums hung from poles for ceremonial use. There are smaller hand drums for personal songs and traveling songs, and water drums for certain societies, with their distinctive, deep, watery tone. There are double-headed drums on the Pacific coast for the dances. There are box drums on the Pacific coast, hollow cedar boxes struck with a stick, deep and resonant. There are tambourine drums for the Inuit, large round wooden frames covered with thin scraped caribou skin, played by tapping the frame itself rather than the head. There are split log drums, hollowed logs struck with mallets. Rattles are made from gourds, from turtle shells, from bird beaks strung on hide, from carved wood with seeds inside, from sewn rawhide with pebbles inside. Flutes are made from cedar or sumac wood, with carved bird heads at one end. Whistles are made from bone and bird quill. Bull roarers are spun on a long cord for ceremonial calls. Rasps are scraped together. Hand clapping and foot stamping and the soft hiss of the leg. Rattles worn by dancers all add to the sound. The songs are many. There are honor songs, hunting songs, lullabies, courting songs, mourning songs, victory songs, traveling songs, paddling songs, work songs for skinning hides, work songs for grinding corn, songs for calling the spirits, songs for cleaning the body, songs taught only to certain people in certain societies. Many songs do not have ordinary words. They are sung in vocables, syllables held in patterns, carrying their meaning in the melody rather than in the language. They can be sung by anyone in any region without needing translation. They are powerful for that reason. They cross all the language boundaries. In an evening at a quiet camp, a young man might pick up a small flute and play a melody for a girl across the way. She would hear it. She would know who it was. Her family would hear it too, but pretend they did not. The melody would drift through the dusk, slow and warm, a soft thread between two lodges. A grandmother might hum a lullaby as she rocks a baby beside her. The melody might be older than her own mother could remember. The baby would settle. The grandmother would close her eyes and continue humming as the baby fell asleep. A group of men returning from a hunt might raise an honor song as they came in sight of camp, walking together along the trail with the meat of a moose on their backs. The song would carry over the trees. The people in the camp would hear it. They would know who was coming and that it had been a good hunt. They would begin preparing the welcome. Music is woven into the day as casually as breathing. It is rarely formal. It is rarely performed. It simply happens when the right moment calls for it and stops when the moment is over. Now we should talk for a quiet while about the way decisions are made. Each of these peoples has its own form of governance, and the forms are subtle and old. The popular idea of chiefs in feathered headdresses dictating to passive followers is not the truth of these systems. The truth is more interesting and more democratic. Among the Haudenosaunee, the great confederacy of 5 and later 6 nations has been bound together for many hundreds of years by what is called the Great Law of Peace. The confederacy is governed by a council of 50 sachems, hereditary chiefs whose titles are passed down through their female line. The clan mothers, the senior women of each clan, choose the sachems. The clan mothers can remove them as well if they do not act properly. The council meets in long, careful sessions. Decisions must be made by consensus. Each nation speaks in turn. Each side of the longhouse, the elder brothers and the younger brothers, deliberates on its own and then meets the other side at the fire in the middle. Issues are passed back and forth until consensus is found. The council can take many days. There is no rush. Beyond the Council of Sechems, there are the women's councils. They have their own decisions to make about land, about agriculture, about the welfare of children, about the choosing and removing of chiefs. There are also the warriors, who form their own council. There are the men's medicine societies and the women's societies, each with their own councils and their own ceremonies. The Haudenosaunee political system is multi-layered and balanced. It has impressed observers for centuries. It has been studied. Its principles of consensus, of the balance between elder and younger, between men and women, between the local and the federal, have been part of the conversation about governance for a long time. Among the Anishinaabe and many other peoples of the eastern woodlands and the boreal forest, decisions are made in band councils. The band is a small group of related families that travel and work together. The leaders are chosen by their qualities, their patience, their generosity, their wisdom, their skill. There is no strict hereditary office. A man who is a good leader is followed. A man who is not a good leader is not followed, although no one will say it harshly. The band moves with him until his guidance no longer serves, and then it moves with another. The structure is loose. It is also resilient. Bands gather into larger groups for certain seasons and certain ceremonies, and at these gatherings broader councils are held. There is also the Midewiwin, the Grand Medicine Society, which holds great influence in spiritual and healing matters across many Anishinaabe and other related communities. Among the Pacific Coast peoples, governance follows the houses and the clans. A great house is led by a house chief. Several houses make up a clan. Several clans make up a village. Several villages may be connected by ties of marriage and trade. The house chief inherits his position, but it must be confirmed through potlatches, through ceremonies, through the giving of property to witnesses who agree that he is the legitimate holder of the title. If he fails in his duties, his standing diminishes. If he succeeds, his standing rises. The system is more formal and more hierarchical than in the eastern woodlands, but it is no less subtle. Names, songs, dances, crests, and rites all belong to particular houses and pass according to particular rules. Some pass through the mother's line, some through the father's line, some through both. The detail is extensive. The witnesses of a potlatch are the ones who ratify the holding of these things. The potlatch is the legal document of the coast. Among the plains peoples, leadership rotates more by function. There is a peace chief who handles the everyday affairs of the camp. There is a war chief who leads in defense and raid. There are leaders of the soldier societies who police the camp during the bison hunt and during the great gatherings. The roles are distinct. A man might be a war chief in his younger years and a peace chief in his older years. The buffalo hunt itself is governed by very strict rules during the great communal hunts. No one may break ranks. No one may start the chase before the leaders give the signal. Anyone who does so spoils the hunt for everyone and is punished. The soldier society polices the rules. They can break a man's tippy poles or his bow if he disobeys. The discipline of the hunt is severe because the stakes are so high. Among the Inuit, governance is informal and personal. The respected hunter, the elder, the wise woman all carry quiet authority. A camp moves when the families in it agree to move. A camp settles when the families in it agree to settle. Disputes are sometimes settled by song duels, in which two men face each other in a circle of listeners and sing satirical songs about each other, each trying to be wittier and sharper than the other. The crowd judges. The judgment matters. Public opinion is the central social force. These governance practices, very different in detail, share certain things in common. They are slow. They are talkative. They are concerned with relationships and balance. They are not driven by single leaders making decrees. They are conducted with patience. The pipe is smoked. The food is shared. The talk goes on. The decision is found eventually in the space where the talk wears itself down to agreement. We should also speak of healing and of dreams. The two are related. Many of these cultures pay close attention to dreams. A dream is not merely a passing image. It is a message, or a warning, or a teaching, or a glimpse of something true. A person who has a strong dream may share it with an elder. The elder may interpret it. Certain dreams call for ceremony. Certain dreams are not to be spoken of at all, but only acted upon. Among the Haudenosaunee, the midwinter ceremony involves a long process of recounting the previous year's dreams and trying to fulfill the wishes the dreams have shown. A society called the False Face Society makes carved wooden masks that are used in healing ceremonies, with their bent noses and twisted mouths and long horsehair manes. The masks are kept wrapped in cloth and fed with tobacco. They are not idols. They are living things. In the worldview of the people, they are treated with care. Healers, sometimes called medicine people, are common across all these cultures. They are not a single type. There is the herbalist who knows the plants. There is the bone setter who knows the body. There is the midwife who attends births. There is the seer who sees into causes that ordinary people cannot see. There is the singer who heals through specific songs. There is the dreamer who finds the cure through dream. There is the soul caller who retrieves lost parts of a person. In a given community, several of these roles may be combined in one person or distributed across many. The healer is often paid in goods or in service. A serious healing may require gifts of cloth, of food, of furs given over the course of the treatment. The exchange is part of the medicine. A cure given without payment is sometimes considered weaker because there is no relationship of obligation between the giver and the receiver. A healing ceremony might begin with the building of a small shelter, or with the lighting of a fire, or with the smudging of the patient with burning sage or sweetgrass or cedar. The healer sings, the healer prays, the healer lays on hands. The healer may suck out with a small bone tube the thing that is causing the illness. The healer may speak with the patient about what has happened in their life recently, what has been weighing on them, what has been unfinished. The healer may give them a herb to drink. The healer may give them a small object to wear, a small bundle of medicines tied in hide and worn on a thong around the neck. The healing happens in the relationship as much as in the substance. The patient is held by the community for the duration of the healing. The work may take days or weeks. There is also the matter of weapons, which are tools too, and which are made in the same way that other tools are made, with care, with patience, with knowledge passed down from older makers. The bow is one of the great works. A bowyer chooses a stave of the right wood, a length of red mulberry or osage, or ash, or hickory, or in the north, larch or birch. He works the wood down with a flat scraper of stone or bone, removing material from the belly of the bow, leaving the back untouched. He shapes the limb slowly, day by day. He bends the bow gently, watching how it flexes. He scrapes a little more from the stiffer limb. He bends it again. He works toward a smooth, even curve that bends the same on both sides. He tillers the bow on a wooden frame, pulling it back to its working draw and adjusting until it is perfect. He greases it with bear fat. He wraps the grip with rawhide or sinew. He strings it with a cord of twisted sinew, or rawhide, or in some places, with a length of plant fiber. The bow takes him many weeks. When it is finished, it is balanced and quick and accurate to many tens of meters. The arrows are made in their own slow way. Straight shafts are cut from particular shrubs, dogwood, or serviceberry or hardback, in the right season when the wood is straightest. They are scraped smooth and straightened over the warmth of a fire, the maker pressing the bend out between his palms or between two stones. They are notched at the back for the bowstring. They are tipped at the front with a point of stone, bone, antler, or in some regions copper. The points are fixed into the shaft with sinew and pine pitch. Feathers from a turkey or a hawk or an eagle are split and lashed to the back of the arrow, 3 feathers spaced evenly around the shaft to make it spin in flight. A skilled maker turns out arrows that all fly the same. He keeps them in a quiver of soft hide, often beautifully decorated. The quiver hangs at his back or at his side. The bow rests on his shoulder when he walks. Together they weigh almost nothing. The lance is made from a longer shaft, tipped with a heavier point. The war club is shaped from a single piece of dense wood, sometimes set with a sharp stone. The knife is shaped from chert, or obsidian, or bone, hafted into a handle of antler or wood. The hatchet, before the arrival of trade iron, is a polished stone head bound into a wooden handle with rawhide and pitch. Every tool is handmade. Every maker has his preferences. Every man and woman carries the tools they themselves know well. Naming is also part of life. A baby is given a name shortly after birth, in some peoples, or after a particular sign appears in others. The name might be the name of an ancestor. It might be a name from a dream of one of the parents or grandparents. It might be a name connected to a small event at the time of the birth, the call of a bird, the color of the sky, the running of a creature past the door of the lodge. The name is held lightly at first. A child may have several names through the early years, some private to the family. As the child grows, more permanent names are taken. A young person may receive a new name at the time of their first hunt, their first journey, their first ceremony. A grown person may receive yet another name during a particular ceremony, or during a great event in their life, or through a vision or dream. An elder may carry several names that belong to the different stages of their life. The names tell a small history. Among the Haudenosaunee, names belong to the clans. A clan has a set of names that have been held by members of the clan since the founding of the Confederacy. When a person who holds one of these names dies, the name is not lost. It is set aside, sometimes for a year, and then it is bestowed on another member of the same clan, often a young person who is judged ready to carry it. The bestowal happens at a ceremony. The person who receives the name takes on certain responsibilities along with it. Some names carry the duties of a sachem. Some names carry the duties of a faith keeper. Some names carry only the obligation to live as a person of the clan, but that is enough. Marriage, too, is marked. Most of these cultures have careful customs around the choosing of partners. Often a young man and a young woman have known each other since childhood. Often the families have considered the match for some time. Gifts are exchanged between the families. Among some peoples, the young man comes to live with his wife's family. Among others, the young woman comes to live with her husband's family. Among others, the new couple establish themselves on their own. The marriage may be marked by a small ceremony, by a feast, by the exchange of named goods. Divorce, where it happens, is also relatively quiet. In many of these cultures, either partner can simply leave, and the property is divided, and the children are cared for by the larger family. There is little stigma. Life continues. Death also has its forms. The dead are washed and dressed in fine clothing. They are wrapped in robes or wrapped in bark or placed in carved cedar boxes. They may be buried in the earth in some cultures. They may be placed on raised wooden platforms in others, exposed to the air and the birds. They may be cremated in some places. The grave goods reflect the life. A hunter is buried with his bow. A worker of hides is buried with her tools. A child is buried with small toys. Mourning lasts for some defined period, sometimes a year or more. Mourners wear simple clothing, cut their hair, refrain from certain activities. At the end of mourning, a feast is held. The dead are remembered with stories. The living return to their full life. The reading of weather is another quiet skill that runs through every day. A man steps out of his lodge in the morning and looks at the sky. He sees the shape of the clouds. He sees the color of the dawn. He feels the wind on his cheek. He notices whether the smoke from his fire rises straight up or bends sideways. He watches the behavior of the animals nearby. He hears the calls of the birds. From all of this, he makes a quiet judgment about the day. A high, thin cloud means a slow change is coming. A red sky in the morning means a storm by afternoon. The ravens flying low and silent mean cold weather. The geese moving south early mean a hard winter. The frogs calling loud in the evening mean rain by morning. The pine cones closing tight mean wet days ahead. The aurora dancing in long, quick curtains in the north means a sharp drop in temperature. The fish rising in the lake just before sunset mean a calm night. These small signs are read constantly. They guide the day's choices. They tell the family whether to set out, whether to stay, whether to hurry the drying of meat, whether to bring in the canoes, whether to lay extra firewood by the door. The same close reading is given to the land itself. A track in the soft earth tells the species of the animal, its size, its direction, its speed, the time since it passed. A bent stem on a bush tells which way a deer turned. A pile of fresh leaves and bark tells where a beaver has been working. A drop of pitch on a tree trunk tells where a porcupine has chewed. The forest is a book. Each page is open to those who can read it. The reading begins in childhood and never ends. These are the layers of life as the people know it. The day is full. The day is not full of hurry. The day is not full of meetings on calendars or appointments with strangers. The day is full of useful, repeated, beautiful tasks. It is full of teaching that goes both ways, the elders teaching the young teaching the elders. It is full of conversation and listening. It is full of small moments that flow into one another. Now we return to the rhythm of the ceremonies. They are not separate from the work. They are part of it. A ceremony is held before the spring hunt. A ceremony is held when the corn first appears above the ground. A ceremony is held when the salmon first return up the river. A ceremony is held when a child receives a name. A ceremony is held when a young person comes of age. A ceremony is held when a couple makes their union recognized by the community. A ceremony is held when an elder dies and is given to the earth or the sea or the sky. The day passes through these layers of work, of food, of family, of ceremony, of story. By the time the stars come out, the fire is low again. The dishes have been put away. The children have grown sleepy. The grandmother is still speaking, although now her voice is even quieter than before. She speaks of the constellations. She names the stars in her own language. She says where they are now, and where they will be at midnight, and where they will be just before dawn. She speaks of the great bear in the sky, of the path of souls, of the Pleiades. She says that her own grandmother used to sit at this same fire and tell her these same names. She says that one day the children sitting around her will tell them too. Outside, the wind has dropped. The lake is mirror flat. Somewhere on the far shore, a single fire glows, marking another camp, another family, another set of stories being told in another voice. The smoke from the fires drifts straight up in thin pale columns. The dogs are quiet. The horses, where there are horses in later times, stand resting with their heads down. The bison far out on the plain lie down in the grass. The salmon in the deep pools of the river hold themselves slowly against the current. The seal under the sea ice breathes once at its hole and slips away into the dark water. It is a country that is very alive. It is not empty. It is not unused. It is full of people who know it well, who have known it for a very long time, who have shaped their lives to fit it, and shaped it to fit their lives. The forests are tended, the fields are planted, the fish weirs are maintained, the portages are kept clear, the clamming beaches are weeded, the blueberry patches are burned over every few years to keep them open and productive. The bison drives are kept in repair, the river mouths are watched, the whale calls are listened for, the medicines are picked at the right seasons, the stories are told at the right times, the ceremonies are held in the right months, the children are taught in the old ways, the elders are honored, the dead are remembered, the seasons return. You can let yourself sink a little further into the night now. The work of imagining all of this has been gentle work, but it has been work. Your eyes may already be feeling heavy. That is good. That is the right way for this story to be received. We will return for a little while to the longhouse, because the longhouse is a good place to end the day. The clan mother has finished her speaking. The children have drifted off, one by one. The older boys are still awake, talking softly at the other end. The infants are asleep on their mothers' chests. The fire in front of each family section has burned down to embers. The smell of cornmeal and beans and venison still hangs in the air, mixed with wood smoke and the soft, dry smell of stored corn, hanging in long braids from the rafters. The clan mother lies down. She pulls a soft hide over her shoulders. She closes her eyes. The longhouse settles. The walls breathe slightly with the wind. Somewhere a dog whines in its sleep. Somewhere a child sighs. The whole village is quiet. In the Micmac wigwam, the family lies close together on their bed of boughs and mats. The fire has burned down. The clay pot has been removed and rinsed at the shore. The grandmother has wrapped herself in her finest robe, a soft beaver, and lies with her back against the curve of the wigwam wall. The youngest child sleeps in her arm. The waves outside come in and go out and come in again. The wind stirs the spruce trees on the slope above. The wigwam is warm. In the plank house on the coast, the great fires have been damped down. The families have separated to their compartments. The chief lies on a wide platform under his crest screen, with his wife beside him and his children in the next compartment. A few embers glow in the central hearth. The light is very low. Outside, the inlet glitters faintly under the stars. The carved figures on the totem pole in front of the house look down with their large painted eyes. Inside, the breath of 30 people rises and falls together. In the teepee on the prairie, the family lies arranged around the central fire, with the heads of the sleepers toward the wall and the feet towards the center. The small fire crackles low. The smoke flap above is half closed. A thin column of stars is visible through the opening. The night wind moves the cover slightly. Outside, the herds rest in the long grass. The wolves, if there are wolves nearby, are quiet. In the igloo on the sea ice, the family is asleep on the snow platform. The seal oil lamp burns low. The woman has trimmed it just enough to keep it alive through the night. The flame is no larger than a feather. The heat inside is steady. The breath of the family rises and is held in the dome. Outside, the wind has stopped. The aurora is moving silently across the sky in long green waves. The dogs are curled tight in the snow. The world is mostly silent. Across the whole country, this scene is repeated in 1,000 variations. Inside warm shelters, inside familiar smells, inside the rhythms of the day's last small movements, people are settling into sleep. The fires die down. The lamps go out. The voices stop. The country itself, the great patient country, holds them all. If you want to imagine, in this very last sleepy stretch, what the country looks like seen from above, on this night, picture this. Picture a great dark map. On it, scattered across the dark, are tiny points of orange light. Each point is a fire or a lamp. Each point is a home. Around each point, a small ring of warmth and sound. Beyond each point, the dark land. The fires line the coasts. They line the rivers. They cluster around the lakes. They sit in long groups on the prairies. They blink in the deep boreal forest. They glow inside igloos on the Arctic ice. They follow the salmon up the rivers. They follow the bison across the plains. They follow the seasons. They follow each other. They do not blink out. They have been lit for thousands of years. New fires are made from old fires. New voices learn old stories. The map is not empty. The map has never been empty. You do not need to remember any of this in the morning. You do not need to take any of it with you into your dreams. You can simply let it stay here, on this quiet recording, in this quiet voice. Tomorrow it will still be here if you want to come back to it. The clan mother in the longhouse will still be tending her embers. The grandmother in the wigwam will still be wrapping her shawl. The chief in the plank house will still be lying under his carved crest. The hunter in the igloo will still be waiting for the seal at the breathing hole. The herds will still be moving across the grass. The salmon will still be returning to the rivers. The corn will still be growing in the fields. The fires will still be burning across the great dark map. For now, let your breath slow a little more. Let your shoulders settle into the bed. Let the muscles in your face soften. Let your hands rest. Let your eyelids close, if they are not already closed. The story will continue without you. The grandmother will keep telling it long after you have fallen asleep. The lake will keep holding the moon. The fires will keep burning low. The country will keep turning slowly through the night. You have walked a small distance through a very old story. Thank you for walking with it. The history of the first peoples of this land is much larger than any one evening can hold. It contains many languages, many ceremonies, many heartbreaks, many triumphs, many ordinary days like the one we have imagined together. It is still being lived in many forms, by many people, in many places, even now. The fires have not gone out. The stories are still being told. The corn is still being planted in some longhouse village gardens. The salmon are still being smoked. The caribou are still being hunted. The cedar is still being woven. The drums are still being heard. Sleep well tonight. The country is large enough to hold us all. The night is long enough for many quiet thoughts. Tomorrow will come slowly. The fires will be rekindled. The day will begin again, the way it has begun for thousands of years, with the eldest woman waking first and breathing softly across an ember, and feeding a small flame and lighting the inside of a home. That is enough for now. Let it be enough. Let yourself drift. Let the long history rest gently against your sleeping mind. Let the wigwams and the longhouses and the plank houses and the teepees and the igloos stand in their quiet places. Let the lakes and the rivers and the forests and the prairies and the coasts hold them. Let the people sleep. Let yourself sleep. Good night. The wind moves across the lake. The fire is almost gone. The grandmother is silent now. Her hand rests on the head of the smallest child. Her eyes are closed. The longhouse is dark. The wigwam is dark. The plank house is dark. The teepee is dark. The igloo is dark. The smoke from 1,000 fires drifts up into a sky full of stars. Outside the longhouse, the cornfields rest. The bean vines are still in the dark. The squash leaves are heavy with dew. The wooden palisade stands quietly against the trees beyond. The hunting trails wind away into the dark forest. The path to the cornfields is invisible now. The path to the lake is invisible now. The path to the next village is invisible now. They will all be there in the morning. Outside the wigwam, the spruce trees lean in the wind. The drying rack at the edge of the camp holds yesterday's fish. The canoe rests upside down on its rest of 2 short logs. The paddles are stowed beneath it. The water jugs of birch bark hang from a branch. The snares set in the woods are quiet. They will be checked in the morning. Outside the plank house, the totem pole stands silent. The painted figures look out over the inlet. The canoe is pulled up on the beach. The salmon racks are full of drying fish. The cedar bark soaking in the tide pool will be ready to work tomorrow. The clamshell midden, the great long pile of shells built up over generations, lies behind the houses, white and quiet under the stars. Outside the tepi, the grass is still. The travois rests by the door. The bison robes hang on a low rack. The horse, if there is a horse, is tied with a long line and grazes slowly. The drying rack holds long, thin strips of meat that will be done by morning. The fire pit outside is cold, having burned out hours ago. Outside the igloo, the sea ice stretches in every direction. The dogs are curled into the snow with their tails over their noses. The komatik is set on its side against the wind. The harpoons are stored on a low rack, lashed to two upright bones. The hole in the ice where the seal was taken yesterday has frozen over again. Tomorrow, another hole will be found. Across the country, every village has its quiet outside. Every shelter has its quiet inside. Every family has its quiet sleeping breath. The land breathes around them all. The water moves slowly. The trees move slowly. The clouds move slowly. The stars move slowly. The country sleeps. You can sleep too. There is no need to keep listening, although the voice will go on a little longer. There is no need to follow any thread. There is no need to imagine anything sharply. The shapes are blurry now. The wigwam is just a soft cone in the mind. The longhouse is just a long, warm space in the mind. The plank house is just a wide, dim hall in the mind. The teepee is just a tall, narrow tent in the mind. The igloo is just a small white dome in the mind. The people are just gentle shapes lying down. The country is just a great dark patient surface holding them all. A small wind moves through the trees somewhere. Somewhere far away a wolf calls once, soft and round, more a question than a song. Somewhere else an owl answers, slow and hollow. The water laps once against a rock. A loon, far out on the lake, gives a thin distant cry and is silent. The country listens to itself. The country has been listening to itself for thousands of years. There were stories told in this country before any one of us was born. There will be stories told in this country long after any one of us is gone. We have stood in the doorway of one of them tonight. We have looked in. We have seen a fire and a few quiet faces and a few worn hands and a few warm shelters and a few familiar tools. We have heard a grandmother's voice. We have heard the soft scrape of a stone blade on hide. We have heard the soft tap of a stick against rice stalks. We have heard the soft hiss of a hot stone dropped into bark-walled water. We have heard the slow paddle of a canoe. We have heard the long breath of the tide on a stony beach. We have heard the wind on the prairie. We have heard the silence of the sea ice. We have heard the country. Now let the country fade. Let the fires fade. Let the shelters fade. Let the people lie down. Let the voices lie down. Let your own thoughts lie down. There is nothing more to do. There is nothing more to imagine. There is only sleep, and the long night, and the slow turning of the country toward another day that you do not need to be awake for. Sleep now. Sleep deep. Sleep well. The fires will still be there. The stories will still be there. The people will still be there. The country will still be there. The long, quiet country with its lakes and its rivers and its forests and its prairies and its coasts and its mountains and its tundra will still be there. Sleep. The longhouse breathes. The wigwam breathes. The plank house breathes. The teepee breathes. The igloo breathes. The country breathes. We are very near the end now. The voice is going to slow even further. It is going to soften. It is going to fade, but only after one more slow walk around the camp. One more circle of the fire, one more glance at the sleeping faces, one more nod to the grandmother who has been telling stories all evening and who is now, finally, asleep herself. Picture her one last time. She is an old woman. Her hair is long and gray and braided. Her face is lined with many years. Her hands are strong from many tasks. She is wrapped in a soft hide. She lies on a low platform near the warm center of the longhouse. Her breath is slow and even. She is dreaming. She is dreaming of her own grandmother, who sat in another longhouse, in another village, in another season, telling the same stories to her when she was a child. She is dreaming of the long thread of women that runs back through her family. She is dreaming of the long thread of women that will run forward. She is smiling slightly in her sleep. Picture the village around her. Picture the country around the village. Picture the night above the country. Picture the stars above the night. You are very small under those stars. You are very safe in your bed. You are very welcome in this story. You can stay here as long as you need to. You can drift away whenever you're ready. You can let the voice carry on without you. You can let the country hold you the way it has held its people for so long. Sleep now, kindly. Sleep, gently. Sleep. Well, the wind has stopped. The fires have settled. The grandmother is dreaming. The country is quiet. The night is long. Good night, friend. Good night, gently. Good night here in the warm dark, near the embers of many fires that have been burning in many forms in this country for many thousands of years. Good night,